So this video focuses on an open-end zip. You can see this is an open-end zip here. You can look at the bottom to find whether it is an open-end zip. Zip it down and it comes apart. Okay. Often open-end zips have quite large zip heads or toggles, as they are often used for things like coats and jackets. Just as a quick reminder to look at the other types of zips. This is a concealed zip. You can see the toggle is very small and you cannot see the teeth. This would be sewn to the edge of the fabric, and as you zipped it up you wouldn't see any part of the zip, and the toggle is very small and discreet. This is a semi-concealed zip, so or a close-end zip. So you can see this one zips down. It looks a bit like an open-end zip, except it does not come apart at the bottom. Okay, so just be sure you have the right type of zip. The open-end zip is suitable for garments that need to open both at the top and the bottom, which is often jackets and coats, but also sometimes, say, a fitted blouse down the back of the blouse or shirt, if it needs to be opened at the top for the head and also open at the bottom for the waist. So this is our sample, and what this represents the garment. Okay, so it's just a sample piece, and this here is the hem. So the open-end zip needs to be the same size as the garment. So this sample here can represent the back of a blouse, for example. So this represents the kind of neckline of the blouse and the hem. So the reason the zip needs to be the correct length is because it is very challenging to shorten the open-end zip. Unlike the invisible zips, they can be shortened at the bottom if they're too long. The open-end zip, it's much more challenging to do that. The only option you would have if you have a zip that's too long, an open-end zip that's too long, is cutting it at the top. And however, these metal pieces here are the stoppers for the top of the zip. So if you cut at the top, you no longer have your stopper. So you'd have to create one maybe with a thread, whip stitch the thread. So it's not ideal. You want to ideally have the zip match the length of your garment. So this might be a design decision. You might find the zip that you want, and you might have to adjust your garment actually a centimetre or two to match the zip, or it certainly would be advisable to do that. So here we have the piece of fabric that represents the bodice. So essentially what the zip will look like at the end will be like this, okay, and it will be stitched along here. The important thing to remember about the open-ended zip is that the fabric should not come close to the zip teeth. So if you can see here where I've placed it, I have a nice, say, 0.5, 0.7 sort of centimetres away from the zip teeth. Okay, this would be important because the zip head needs to come up and down freely, and if the fabric is too close to the zip, it won't be able to move up and down. Okay, so I have this piece prepared already. You can see the hem is been pressed up, and I've actually pressed back my 1.5 seam allowance already. So this would be what you would want to do before you start your zip, because you can then place the zip and arrange it nicely like that. Okay, you could actually just pin it in nicely and top stitch it along, and some people might do the zips that way. I prefer to have it more secure, and so I would come from the inside and first stitch it down on the inside, and then I will be flipping it over and top stitching it down. So I'm going to pin this on now. So I'm going to flip this over using my 1.5 that I've creased in here and a nice crease for my hem. I'm going to line this up first of all at the hem to be sure that it will sit perfectly. So I've got my crease lined up there, and also I'm going to be looking at keeping this crease line, the 1.5, about 0.5 away from the zip teeth. So I'm going with my measuring tape here. Might be a little hard to see in the video, but I am measuring from my crease line to what I can feel with my finger as the edge of the zip, and keeping that 0.5 away. So this is pinned now and ready to be stitched. So now we're going to stitch the zip on. So I have it pinned. I'm going to stitch it down underneath and then fold it back and top stitch it. So I'm using a Bernina machine here. The model is the 1005. So when you're going to sew zips, you need to just have the correct presser foot. So in this case, the regular presser foot is on the machine. So this one has a separate kind of legged foot there, and you can press that button and release it. So I can do that, and then I can use one of these, the number 4, that's a zip foot, and you can move it from one side to the other depending on which side of the zip you are sewing. This is another one, slightly slimmer, less bulky. So kind of, I believe they're the newer presser feet that are available. And there's the older models have the leg and foot attached together. So all of those are number 4 foot for the Bernina. There's also, just to remind you of the other zip foots available, the 35, that's for the invisible zip. So just not to get that mixed up. Okay, so find your presser foot you want and put it on. So you can see that if I go to stitch now, the needle is going to hit down straight on this presser foot. So it's important that I move the needle over to whichever side I need it. So that's the knob that does that. Okay, and if you are using a machine at home, a different machine, you'll need to find that function on your sewing machine. So what knob or what button moves your needle, or you might have a presser foot, a zip foot, that actually this piece moves over from side to side. So you might need to check your manual and actually read a little bit about it to find what way your zip foot works for your machine. Okay, so we can look at this. If I sew from this side, it's a little bit blind. I don't know where I'm sewing. So, and my needle or my pins are in on this side. So I'm going to sew from here. I have the 1.5 pressed in nicely, so it's a line that I can follow, and I've measured that it should be in the correct place. So I'm going to stick with sewing on this side all the way down, and so I need the needle on this side, on the left side. So there is a zip tape. You might see there's some extra there because it's quite a large amount of sort of excess on this that goes past the zip head. You do need 1.5 there, but I don't need that much. I can cut some of that off afterwards. So I'm going to place this down in position at the end of the calico fabric, and I'm going to start stitching along that line. Stitch, and I'm going to take my threads out as I go. As I get to the bottom, there is quite a hard plastic bit there, but you do need to try and stitch through that. I have my stitch line there, and fold it back. So that is okay, it's secured onto the zip, that's good, but we need one last step because over time this fabric is likely to come in over the zip, and it's very annoying when your fabric gets caught in your zip. So we need to top stitch all the way along here. Okay. So when you're sewing your top stitch, it is really a stitch that you're doing by eye, and you're really just keeping that needle about 1 or 2 millimeters in from the edge. When you're learning, I usually suggest that people go on the safer side and go a little bit further in, like 2 millimeters, because the 1 millimeter line is very, very hard to keep, and you end up coming off and going back on, and it looks doesn't look great. So actually, if you stay just a little bit further in, maybe 2 millimeters, even if you veer in and out and your line isn't perfectly straight, at least it doesn't veer off. Okay, but it should be very close, 1 to 2 millimeters away from the edge. I am slightly pulling the fabric. Usually you don't want to be pulling and reefing fabric a lot, but you need to just pull it back so that it's not creating a little tuck there. Okay, so a nice gentle pull, and keeping your eye and using your hands to direct it. Go very slowly, as you can see. I'm just going very slowly to be sure that I stay in there. Okay, so there we have our top stitch, and our zip head is going to be easily to zip up and down. It's not coming near the zip tape. So here we have the final result of the open-ended zip, and this piece here at the top, it would get folded down, and the neckline, and the zip would be able to be zipped down and separated at the bottom, and then you can get into the garment fully at the neck and the waist or whatever.